The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentlelady for the time. And I'll begin my remarks by saying that I hope that these 3 days of debate, Mr. Speaker, are characterized by civility and respect. Without doubt, this is the most difficult issue that we will confront in this Congress. Iraq is terribly complex. The stakes for our national security are great, and the sacrifice in American lives and the loss of Iraqi lives have been very painful. This is a war unlike any other we've fought, and it has been vexing. All of us, supporters and opponents of this resolution alike, Republicans and Democrats, all Americans, have a vital interest in our nation succeeding in helping to build a stable Iraq and defeating Islamist terrorism. That's the challenge of our time. As we've heard, mistakes have been made. There is no doubt about that. I've been dismayed by some of them. The lethargy in training Iraqi troops, the inability to meter oil and protect civilian infrastructure. But we can't allow this to cloud our strategic judgment. To my mind, this resolution, indeed our struggle in Iraq, can be boiled down to 2 questions. Are Iraq and the global struggle against Islamist terrorism separable? And is Iraq hopeless? The answers to both questions is no, which leads me to a no on this resolution. The rationale for this war has changed, whether we like it or not. We're now fighting for stability and moderation against the Islamist terrorism that is now host in Iraq. Our civil war didn't start out as a battle against slavery. It was a fight to save the Union. We started out fighting Saddam and to stop what the majority of this House believed was his weapons of mass destruction program. We're now fighting Islamist terrorism. It is a different and more daunting fight, but the consequences of our success or failure are no less critical because the stakes of this battle have changed. Let there be no doubt about this. Defeat in Iraq will be a terrible blow to our national security. It will psychologically boost the Islamist terrorists who were fighting there and elsewhere. The bipartisan Iraq study group reported Ayman al-Zawahiri, deputy to Osama bin Laden, has declared Iraq a focus for al-Qaeda. That declaration is more than words. While not all fighters in Iraq are jihadists, many are. Some have wrongly denied that here on the House floor today. Jihadists are coming from all over the world. The report reads, quote, "They will seek to expel the Americans and then spread the jihad wave to the secular countries neighboring Iraq," unquote. Chaos in Iraq will allow for more terrorist safe havens there. The 9/11 Commission stated that every policy decision we make needs to be seen through the lens of terrorist sanctuaries. My colleagues, I would ask if we are doing that. And that report stated that if Iraq becomes a failed state, it will go to the top of the list of places that are breeding grounds for attacks against Americans abroad. We saw what happened when Afghanistan descended into chaos. Al-Qaeda emerged out of the ruin to strike America on 9/11. That's the type of threat we're facing today, which will be supercharged if Iraq fails. We have to confront the potential disaster scenario in the region that U.S. failure in Iraq could bring, which would be worsening strife, which could engulf the entire region, sparking a wider war in this resource-rich area. Saudis have warned that they are prepared to aid Sunni militias. Jordan could move troops into Iraq's western desert to serve as a buffer. The Turks are increasingly worried about the independent Kurdish movement. Iran could move to secure the oil fields of the south. In describing the consequences of continued decline in Iraq, the Iraq Study Group wrote, "Such a broader sectarian conflict could open a Pandora's box of problems, including the radicalization of populations, mass movement of populations, and regime changes that might take decades to play out." This is the powder keg that is Iraq today. The status quo is nasty, but the consequences of failure, while unpredictable, is far worse. So to the second question, is Iraq hopeless? I can understand why many Americans may feel that way. Every day there are horrific car bombings. The sectarian violence has intensified. We'll hear many assessments that Iraq is hopeless in this debate. No one is going to argue that success is guaranteed. But arguments that we have no chance of bringing stability on the ground in Iraq are also extreme arguments. Are the forces of chaos so strong, and are the forces of stability and moderation so weak as to doom with certainty our efforts? But I've spoken with too many people in the field, people with some optimism, that I'm not ready to conclude that with certainty. And I don't think this House should reach that conclusion. And that's my read of the Bipartisan Iraq Study Group, which, while recognizing the grave challenges, spoke of improving the prospects for success. The fact that the consequences of our defeat would be so great also leads me to persist. Let's consider more about the implications of defeat. Look at neighboring Iran. Most Americans remember the 1979 Iranian takeover of our embassy in Tehran. That led to 444 days of captivity for our men and women. Unfortunately, relations with Iran have only worsened since. Iran today is a state sponsor of terrorism, it aids Hezbollah, and it backed this terrorist group's war on Israel this summer. With Iranian backing, Hezbollah is the A-team of terrorism, running highly sophisticated operatives worldwide, including here. Some terrorism experts consider Hezbollah to be a more challenging foe than al-Qaeda. Iran is backing the insurgents fighting our men and women in Iraq. Iran is also storming ahead with a nuclear weapons program. The embassy takeover was a big morale boost for Islamist terrorists. Some trace the beginning of Islamist terrorism to that embassy takeover. The shattering of the Iraqi state in our hands would be that 1979 morale boost magnified. It would also prove the way for tremendous Iranian influence in the region. We must face our responsibility to the Iraqi people. Yes, we have given them 4 years to come together. It has been beyond frustration that they haven't. Tens of thousands of Iraqis have died during this time. What happens if we leave or operate without the manpower our military leadership says it needs? I don't think anyone believes that the carnage won't be several times what we've seen. We often hear calls to intervene in countries for humanitarian reasons. Some would like our military to go to Darfur in Sudan. Maybe we should take decisive military actions to stop that genocide. But what about trying to finish a job where we've already made a huge military commitment, knowing full well that our rash withdrawal would lead to a brutal humanitarian crisis? We also often hear from some about how unpopular our country is worldwide. This is said to greatly harm our influence and interests, and there is truth to that. Just wait if our withdrawal precipitates a horrific scale of ethnic cleansing. Is that the Iraqi legacy we want? I'm not ready to concede the inevitability of this. It's very important that our nation be united. Our success depends upon it. We need to be sowing discord among the enemy, not ourselves. We have had successes against Islamist terrorism worldwide. This resolution states that Congress disapproves of the January decision of the President to deploy more troops to Iraq. The Bipartisan Iraq Study Group panel, but 1 month earlier, said it could support a short-term redeployment of American combat forces to stabilize Baghdad. This resolution goes in the opposite direction. I've heard the argument about why this resolution isn't a retreat, but it's a non-binding rebuke of the President's tactics, that it doesn't cut off funding. That may be the case on paper, but the symbolism is far greater. I don't see how opposing our professional military's call for more troops at this pivotal time is anything but a signal of permanent retreat. It is also congressional micromanagement. The war is horrible. The easy thing would be to just say out. But we can't wish away the Islamist terrorists who will take great strength from our defeat. That's what they're saying. These individuals and groups are as persistent as they are brutal. They must be fought and defeated. So let's not give these forces a win on the floor of the U.S. House. I ask my colleagues to think through these implications and vote down this resolution, and I yield the balance of my time.